When people talk about what bilingual instruction looks like from day to day, it's really important to start with our vision, because the curriculum didn't come first. Our values came before our curriculum offer.
It's about knowing what our key targets are for our teachers. So what is the key language? What is the approach? And how does it fit with what's been taught before and what's been taught after?
The first year of bilingual would have been, and I'm sort of looking to Bunmi and Alastair to correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think it would have been 2013. This
is the stage my child is at. This is the next stage. And I think we are clearer and clearer with our families now about the journey that's happening. A journey for us in how we describe our bilingualism and what it looks like in practice.
Welcome to Thinking Deeply About Primary Education, the podcast that makes time and space to think about pedagogy, teaching and learning, professional development, anything of interest to time-poor but enthusiasm-rich primary teachers. Now, this week, we are going to explore bilingual instruction with the team from Shaftesbury Park. So we've got James Cousins, who's the Chair of Governors and who highlighted me to the fact that this school was in existence and that for a long time they've been taking this approach with their curriculum. We've got Bunmi Richards, the head teacher, and we've got Alastair Anderson, the deputy head teacher, who's almost, I think, operationally responsible for lots of the logistical thinking. And so what entailed was a fantastic discussion all around the practicalities and the ethos and the approach and what it really takes to provide children in England in 2026 with bilingual opportunities in school that almost go beyond the regular and what you would expect language instruction to be like in school. I suppose the only notes before we begin are, we've still got tickets available for the TDAPE conference online and on demand. All funds going to Bilingual Cancer Centre. Maybe I'll sort of flag some of those talks in the next couple of weeks, but they're there, and links are as always in the description. And I think next week I've got an announcement on the next live TDAPE conference. It's certainly, if it's not next week, the weekend after that. So without further ado, let's spend some time thinking deeply about primary education. So Bunmi, Alastair and James, it's fantastic to see you. How are you guys today?
Thank you very much for having us all on here to talk about Shaftesbury Park.
Yeah, all good. Great to see you.
Yeah, we're delighted to be here.
I mean, this is one we've had on the books for a while. Actually visited Shaftesbury Park Primary in Wandsworth, you guys are in London, to see how things are going, because when James got in touch to talk about the bilingual instruction, amongst other things that you guys specialize in, I thought this is something I think would be really, really interesting to listeners of the podcast. So we're going to explore bilingual instruction, the logistics, the pitfalls, the strengths, and then we'll see, almost to present the story of Shaftesbury Park maybe over an extended period of time. But I think maybe if we begin with those logistics, what does bilingual instruction actually look like in your setting day to day?
When people talk about what bilingual instruction looks like from day to day, it's really important to start with our vision, because the curriculum didn't come first. Our values came before our curriculum offer. And as a school, for many years, we've recognised what an incredibly diverse community we are part of. And the children come from a wide range of cultures and backgrounds. And we had our strapline, a local school with a global perspective. And so we were already a school that was ripe for something different. So when the LA approached us to ask us if we wanted to increase from a 1.5 form entry school to a 2 form of entry school to include a bilingual curriculum, we just leapt at the chance. We thought, well, we do celebrate cultural events already across the world. We actively encourage children to take pride, in their culture, and we wanted children to establish a good sense of self-worth. So we decided, yes, we would take on this new innovative initiative, which involved a lot of deep thought about what the bilingual curriculum would look like, as well as some structural building work that needed to take place. And part of that journey was really liaising with lots of stakeholders to make sure that we could articulate our vision, and we could actually live with our vision as well. And once we were clear about that, then we began to research different models, and we decided on the CLIN approach because we didn't believe that the teaching of the French language should be just taught in isolation. It needed authenticity and to be taught within our topic, and therefore it was part of the fabric of our teaching and our learning.
So our bilingual education spans the whole of our school. So from our youngest pupils who are 2 years old all the way up to our 11-year-old. And as Bunmi said, it really needed a sound foundation so that everyone had a clear understanding of what our approach was, why we were doing it, and that built a consistency across school. So it's really consistent, but it's different for each phase as appropriate for the child. It's a real child-led approach. Our teachers in our bilingual stream are bilingual native English speakers. A lot of them were raised as English speakers in French-speaking countries and have had that experience of growing up and learning a second language. They've got that kind of first-hand experience of, I don't know what that means, or I don't know what that word is. How do I construct this language? So they've got that personal experience as well. For our youngest pupils, those 2, 3, 4-year-olds, it is very much oracy focused, and it is about developing the sounds. It's about developing the language, and very much like it would be for an English native speaker, that happens through song, that happens through clear instruction, that happens through useful language. So colours, names, and building up that pattern of speech so they understand right from that early stage what the French language sounds like. By the time then our pupils move up to year 1, they've got a really good understanding of what French sounds like. They're starting to use that language independently, and that's where we start to make a bit more of a shift. So for our early years, it's taught incidentally throughout the day. Key stage 1, we make a distinct break. Our mornings are taught in English. So you have an English lesson, you have a maths lesson, you have a phonics lesson. And the afternoon is taught increasingly in French, and it's a topic-based approach. So whatever the topic is, the English lesson is focused around that, and the afternoon session is focused around that as well. So you're getting dual exposure to the language. In year 1, the children are starting to become much more confident with using their language and speaking and responding in French. By year 2, after our children pass their phonics screen, they start to apply French phonics. And the speed at which, from that solid basis of oracy and hearing, they have excellent phonics results. They learn to read really, really quickly in French, and actually much quicker than they've learned the language. By the time they're moving on to year 3, because they can read, because they can write in French, and they've got all of that language, they can then really apply those talk sessions. So the first topic in year 3 is ancient Egypt. So they will learn in depth about ancient Egypt in the morning, and then come the afternoon where they've got those sessions in French, they're much more able to learn and develop. And it's a really successful program. I mean, about 70% of the English language is based around French. So if you're learning in the morning about scarab beetles, it's not too much of a jump in the afternoon to map on scarab and say, oh, I can see the similarity and I can use it and I can apply it really quickly and I can be successful in French. And that deepens and deepens and deepens as we go up to year 6, where 50% of the day is delivered in French. And it's a really deep and solid model, built on progression, built on understanding of the system. That means children are confident to use and apply their language, and it builds those skills at the correct speed. And also it's about giving them that scope to develop as well and be able to apply and be confident. So yeah, it's a whole system. And that's why it works, because people appreciate what's come before and what's going to come after. And for our teachers, being able to use their own skills, being able to have those skills valued, infuses their teaching so much more. And it means that those children really pick up, this is something of value.
By the time our children leave Year 6, many of the children leave with their DELF qualification, something that we're extremely proud of, that they've got something to show at the end of their bilingual journey at Shaftesbury Park School. And the qualifications that they leave with, the equivalent to the GCSE, isn't it, pass in secondary school. So I think, as I said, we're really proud that we have that offer for all our children.
I'm feeling somewhat the imposter here because I'm not the teaching professional. I'm one of the governors at the school, but obviously very, very deeply committed to the bilingual project, and actually put my children through it, which is one of the ways I've been associated with the school. And I think what is perhaps lacking from the sort of teaching perspective, perhaps, is actually as a child it becomes, and as a parent, it came very, very naturally to the children, the way it was taught. They gradually were exposed more and more, and the learning was by immersion. My children were never actually really taught how to speak French. It's just something they picked up because they were getting the visual cues perhaps in reception, and then that was developing until they were sort of learning the words and they were thinking bilingually quite a lot. And I think the other bits, it's worth saying that they came from an English-speaking monolingual household. My French was very, very rusty, and is now mocked mercilessly by my daughter, who says my accent is the most atrocious French accent she has ever heard in her life, and she's ashamed of me speaking it. But they also sort of learn a lot socially about it. So it isn't just about the acquisition of a language, it's also about the acquisition and understanding of French culture. We celebrate sort of key dates in the French calendar. We do a lot of sort of French cultural exchanges and little links with schools there. So it isn't just purely about a language, which, is great for them to use on holiday. It's about that sort of international perspective that Bunmi mentioned right at the beginning. It's something that's very, very deeply ingrained into the school's culture. And it's one of those three core parts of our vision.
And something I think we're really proud of is our wider partnership that we have with parents and with the community. And as Bunmi spoke at the start, a lot of work was done with stakeholders, and we keep that up to date. So there are termly meetings where parents can come and share their experiences of the curriculum, because it's very much a pathway of what do we as a collaborative team want the children to be at the end. What is each child's end journey? What is their goal? And how are we putting on them on that pathway? So whether it's by supporting them more with an extended French session to develop their writing, or really focusing on their sound work, it's about how can we work together within the education, rather than this is what we're doing and you like it or you don't like it, but this will be the end result.
I don't think we should also underestimate the energy, ambition, and the ambition of our staff in managing the model that we have. It's not for the faint-hearted, we know that, but what it does do is attract ambitious teachers. You have a real sense of what the modern world will look like, and a real commitment to developing children who have cultural appreciation, empathy, and global citizenship. So with that understanding, we have worked hard to ensure that we have a monitoring system that's central to the work that we do, because this work needs to be reviewed continually, refined, reviewed. We need to monitor, we need to observe, and we need to continue to be ambitious. And we can do that if we reach out to other schools that have a bilingual curriculum. And as a school, we have done that, and we've set up really a bilingual hub where it's a meeting of minds, where schools offer probably a different target language, but a similar bilingual curriculum, in different degrees really, of the intensity of the language that is taught. But the sharing of ideas, the coming together to refine our practice and to bounce ideas from each other is invaluable.
And I think what really stands out to me listening to you guys is that, this is not a half measures thing. You are, like I say, it starts with your vision, and everything you do is driven by that decision to take this approach. And I think the fact that it's no half measures, some of the things that come to mind is the the empathy of teachers, the experience of teachers is really, really important. And perhaps the resourcing of, as an increasingly bilingual curriculum. How do you manage the logistics of teaching through two languages?
Teaching through two languages, is a difficult thing to do, and it takes its time. And as our teachers join us, working through the approach and working through the systematic approach that we have to teaching is really important. It's about knowing what our key targets are for our teachers. So what is the key language? What is the approach? And how does it fit with what's been taught before and what's been taught after? So, as Bunmi said, it's not for the faint-hearted, but there are a lot of structures in the background that you can hang on and you can work with. Each of our French-speaking classes also has a native French speaker in the classroom. So that way, as James said, we can ensure that our children are coming out with the crisp French accent rather than an English native speaker's best French accent, which is never really going to cut it. It also means that we get excellent grammar. So at every point, the children are learning point-specific grammar. And again, that just builds. Having that so specific around you and immersing you means that there is that automatic, as children do, that kind of sponge effect. They absorb it and they know it. And again, my daughters have come through the school, they will pick me up on my French grammar. They will say, it's la, it's not la. Like, this is why it's that. And again, especially for our new teachers, working across our units. So making sure that everyone is supported as they go through. Now, we've also got our enterprise stream as well as our bilingual stream. And the lessons are exactly the same as they go through. So each child is getting the same specific learning. And then in the afternoon, it's delivered in slightly different ways. And that's where our teachers are given that little bit more time to adapt, plan. And then they do that for their bilingual lessons. And then the enterprise class will do that for their enterprise lesson with a skills-based focused. So all of our teachers have a lot of work to do, if I'm honest, but we give them as much support around that as possible.
Just recently, we look at the planning. I think that our planning, our curriculum overview is very, very tight. So a new teacher coming in, pick up the planning and know what to teach if they're in a bilingual class. Our social curriculum, the conversational French, has been very carefully structured. And it builds and builds throughout. It builds and repeats. We recognise repetition and practice is key. And we spent time, and will continue to spend a lot of time as we apportion, our inset programs into planning and what that actually looks like. So a new teacher can come in and pick up our teacher plans and go with it.
And I think one thing that possibly it can be overlooked when you look at the day-to-day and the logistics and the challenges in the individual day of a classroom is actually how long we've been doing this and how much of a long-term commitment there is to it. I was just sort of thinking the other day, as a governor, none of the governors who were involved in actually agreeing this and approving this and getting it all set up in the first place are on the board anymore. They've all gone. In some cases, they've been replaced 2 or 3 times with people doing a term of office and then going. But throughout it all, the consistency, as well as the culture within the school, the culture on the board has been, this is something that we believe in passionately. We support it. We want to make it work, and we recognise that isn't something that you do in a term or a year. It's something that is a multi-year project. So we've been sticking at it for a long time. And I think over that time, certainly in my conversations with teachers, it's been apparent how every single year has further refined and further improved and further developed what we're doing, because it is quite, in both our streams, quite a niche thing. Both of them are doing the national curriculum, and we use the international primary curriculum, and we've used that for years as sort of part of our wider outlook. But they're both developing that and then adding an extra layer on top, whether it's the bilingualism or whether it's the enterprise skills that they do in the enterprise stream. But it has been a multi-year project, and we are always very keen as a board to know, number one, how is it being delivered? How is it improving? But also, how are we consolidating? How are we making sure that everything that we've picked up over this past year, this past 2-3 years, is being learned and applied and developed to make sure that every single year, actually, I think we can say with evidence that our bilingual stream has been getting better and better, and the delivery has been getting better and better, and is totally unrecognisable. Sadly, I say as a parent, because my children got it, 6 years ago. If they were going there now, it would be, I think, slightly unrecognisable to them, but actually a much, much better educational experience.
When I visited, one of the best bits was the story of the school, but I thought actually I would like people to listen and then go to school, so I don't want to ruin the story for them. But how many years are we talking in terms of from the governing body saying, yes, we're going to go in this direction, to where we are today? Is it 15 years, if I remember correctly?
The first year of bilingual would have been, and I'm sort of looking to Bunmi and Alastair to correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think it would have been 2013. But you had the French teacher, the first French teacher was in for 2012, starting to develop it, if I recall correctly. So
that's right, yeah.
We're getting towards the point where we've actually had 2 full generations of sort of school children going through, the 7 years reception to year 6. But in that time as well, we've also added in, we've now extended it downwards. So our 3 and even 2-year-old nursery attendees are getting little bits of French, and you can go into their classrooms and see the numbers and the colours and things like that. So it has, like I say, been a long-term project, and one that we've been committed to, despite sometimes occasionally a bit of pressure that maybe we want to change the way we're doing things. We've been quite firm in our view that we need for this to develop properly, and for teachers to know that that's going to happen, that they're secure what they're doing now is going to have a value for a long time, not just to be a win that we throw out the window in a term's time after another conference.
You don't see this very often in education, which I think makes the story even more fascinating. You've clearly made a decision to really go for this. I mean, does that end then actually, in terms of teacher retention, because they're fully bought into the model, do you find that actually you're having to say, no, you're ready for the next step in your career? Because I've definitely met schools where that's the case, where like people could have been assistant heads or deputy heads many, many years before. It strikes me as that Shaftesbury Park is the kind of place where people stick around and they want to be there because they really wholeheartedly believe in things. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I think mobility is not high at Shaftesbury Park. People do tend to stay once they're here. However, that's not to say that those don't move on. People don't move on, teachers do. But one of the things that people find very surprising is that recruitment of new teachers who are bilingual hasn't been an issue for us. People tend to do their research, like what they read, what we put out, and come very specifically to teach at our school. So we haven't found that a challenge in terms of recruiting, and therefore when people know that, if they want to move on and progress, that's equally embraced, as well as equally being happy to accept new members of staff who want to start their bilingual teaching journey.
One of the things we as a board do, as governors, is whenever a teacher leaves, we do the exit interview as a sort of slightly independent, but still fairly senior people within the school. We like to give teachers the opportunity to tell us what they think about it. So obviously one of the questions is we ask them about why they're going, and it is invariably, I think it's fair to say, quite a few. Every teacher has different reasons, and particularly teaching in London is quite tricky just from a practical point of view because it's an expensive place to live. But it's a fairly clear pattern that teachers are staying here a little bit longer because what we're doing is something a bit different and it's a bit special, and they feel they're getting more from their practice and for their career from Shaftesbury Park as a school than they might do perhaps moving up a step in terms of management into middle and senior leadership. They can gather more from this that prepares them for the next really big step in their career. And I think the other point to make as well, because oddly, even though it's an exit interview, I always ask the entry question, what was it that attracted you to Shaftesbury Park? And one of the things that comes across very, very strongly, not just from the bilingual teachers who have gone on, but also from the non-bilingual teachers, is that they are very, very attracted by what the school's doing. And even if they aren't coming here to do bilingual, that was one of the things that first grabbed their attention. This is a school that does something a bit different, and maybe this is a school where I want to be there because they have ideas and they're not just following the national curriculum and following the processes, but doing something a bit more innovative and exciting.
You've got things in place to make it as frictionless as possible for new teachers, really consistent structures, and then tried and tested resources over a number of years. And that's sort of almost like your keys to align new teachers to assimilate or align the current staff to like continually refine and improve their their practice. I was going to ask about the biggest misconception. Actually, no, I probably still will, yeah. But I'm also thinking about, right, okay, if I wanted to start today, or say I'm a trustee at a multi-academy trust, and I said, okay, let's really consider this bilingual instruction. Where are we going to start? And would it involve some sort of phased rollout, or you think it's everybody all at once? What would the practical solution to that be if we were some of this and going, actually, this sounds really good?
Yeah, I would say, well, just based on our journey, it's that thinking behind it. I don't think it's something you can just pick up and say, look, this is what we're going to do. There's a lot of talk about your values, really, where you are as a school. And, it's a temperature ride. Are the staff, particularly, that are going to deliver this, are they on board? And to really tease out some of the tensions that people could have around it. Again, the workload. Again, about, is the leadership team particularly sort of more spending a disproportionate amount of time on the French development when that's not part of the national curriculum as such? It's really understanding and having a discussion and debate about what it is you're trying to deliver. So I definitely don't think it's something you can just pick up. I think those discussions need to be had. The vision needs to be clear. The support around the curriculum design needs to be clear. What model you're going to use. Because in our bilingual hub, they're very different models. There are those that just speak French all the time, their target language. There's some that spend different times of the day speaking the language. Just be clear about the curriculum design, and that needs work. So I think a year or two before you actually launch, teasing things out, working things through is really important.
One of the things that you need to be absolutely clear on for that board level is that there is the support and there is the long-term support there. As a governor, I would be incredibly disappointed, and I would never ever want to be in a position where we had a parent who chosen our school for reception, and then 3 years later we were having to say to them, we're not going to carry on doing bilingualism, because that just isn't fair or sustainable. Or that they have an older child there, but that's not going to be available for the younger sibling. So you're looking at it, probably realistically, if you ever wanted to end it, I think for us, morally speaking, we'd have a 7-year notice period. But we're not planning on doing that, because we are fully and totally committed to the bilingual model that we've adopted. And I think the other aspects of it is knowing what you want to be and where you want to be. So actually parents can also know what you're delivering. And, we know it isn't right for everyone. One of the reasons why, for example, we have been very strong defenders of our enterprise stream, when I can get it out, is because we know that not every single parent wants to have a bilingual education for their child. They may not feel they're able to support it, or they may actually think, well, we speak 2 languages at home, I don't want to add a third one into the mix. So we've always been very, very clear that however popular our stream gets, and at times it has got quite popular, and you've had parents saying, we'd love, why don't you just go fully bilingual? Why don't you do it for everyone? We've always been able to say, no, this is what we've said from the start. We want to remain an inclusive school. We want to be a school for everyone. We have this exceptional language provision, but also we have the enterprise provision that offers a different approach, but just as valuable. And I think, I'm hoping Bunmi and Alastair will say this, having the board there, having that sort of resolute and very, very clear view of what we wanted, and also clearly saying it's multi-year, actually helps them, and helps them give the staff the sort of space that they need to develop what they have to develop in what is an exceptional way of doing things.
It's really supportive having the board articulating exactly how the school, what the priorities are for the school. And allowing us with confidence to move forward, just given the current situation with people numbers, falling birth rates, and the pressure to perhaps change curriculum to accommodate these pressures. It's really been encouraging to know, look, we've really got to stand strong and look for other ways in which we can maintain the curriculum that we do.
What do you think the biggest misconceptions people have about bilingual instruction might be? I mean, it sounds like maybe we've covered them as we've been discussing this, but is there anything that people should have in mind to think, actually, this is not the way it actually plays out?
The most common misconception that other people just sort of share with me is you're doing the bilingual curriculum instead of what are the children missing out on if you're actually putting all this in? And to be able to say it's not instead of, it enhances everything that you do, has been something that's worth sharing. And we do that in several ways. We share our results. I recently did a webinar where we looked at the results of the children in the bilingual classes, and they were way above national and local authority as well. And the local authority results are not to be sniffed at, and they're above local authority and national. And to celebrate that is something we're really proud of, because we do know what we offer enhances learning.
The sort of whole idea of what bilingualism actually means. And I think very early on, and we've done a lot of work actually, it was one of the lessons that was learned quite early on, was that parents, I think, felt they knew what a bilingual education meant, because it seems easy, doesn't it? It means that the child can speak French and English. But then when the parents complaining in year 2, well, hold it, my child isn't fluent. I put on some French radio or something, and they couldn't understand a word. And it's like, well, actually what we're doing is we are scaling them up. We start them off from this really quite low level, and then we build up. We build up to the level where they are actually getting quite fluent by year 6. But early on, no, you're not going to be having a fluent conversation with a French person in year 2. You're not going to be at the stage where you're reading, Albert Camus in the original French in year 4. And it took, I think, a bit of time, and I think both Alastair and Bunmi would comment on this. We did actually have to spend quite a lot of time saying, actually, this is what it means in practice for your child. This is what they'll be learning. And we sort of have the language ladders of, this is the stage that each child is at, and that you will see the progression. But I think people didn't fully appreciate that actually language acquisition, it comes easily for babies and very, very young children, but then doing it on top of the national curriculum, doing it on top of the native language and all the other things we have to do takes a bit of time. And it was a tricky period, I think, just getting that through, because bilingualism on its own sounds very, very easy. Actually doing it and learning it for the children takes a bit more time.
The language ladder was really supportive in helping to clarify that with parents. So it wasn't there at the very early point, as James says. Without that assessment against, parents have got this open-ended idea of what bilingualism is. So my child will be speaking French and English, and they'll be fluent in both. But the language labs were really supportive in helping them see explicitly, this is the stage my child is at, this is the next stage. And I think we are clearer and clearer with our families now about the journey that's happening. It's definitely been a journey for us in how we describe our bilingualism and what it looks like in practice and what the outcomes are.
That's one of the key reasons, really, why we invite the parents into our school every term. They come in and they see the teachers teaching in the classroom. And really, they go into their children's class most of the time, but again, they're free to go into other classes, and it's sort of like an open door afternoon where they can come. First of all, the bilingual lead will give a talk about how we deliver our bilingual curriculum, and then they have the opportunity to go and see it in practice. And we do that, as I said, once a term, so they know exactly what they're getting. We're able to celebrate our achievements as well.
Generally, understanding about language learning, fluency, they're subject to such like lots of misconceptions. So what you're describing there isn't a million miles away from like my own experience of language, and like the Common European Framework, I think it's called in the CFER, and like how it's reasonably flat until B, and then it's good. You've got a lifetime of learning there. So I think the fact that you're getting your guys towards the GCSE level, is amazing, and that the idea that they're doing, they're surpassing their peers. That bears out with children who move to England and have English as a second language. The longer they're here, the longer they're speaking both languages, they tend to outperform those people with one language at GCSE level. So, it certainly, it matches up with sort of my understanding of how, bilingualism might be slow and steady at the start, but actually there's the propensity to fly as you move through. the last thing then to explore are perhaps the key tensions, challenges, or decisions that keep emerging from you. It might be that actually these children are leaving primary school at such a level that perhaps some of that gets lost in secondary school. I don't know. What are the things that almost keep you thinking about how to continually refine things?
The transition between primary and secondary. They've got to a certain level of development experience in the French language, and they go on secondary school, and there's no clear pathway forward. No secondary school are doing various options like taking language early, etc. But still, we're yet to see a secondary school who is offering anything near what is necessary for continuity. I know it's more challenging in secondary, but that is a tension and an issue. What do we do with it once we have it?
Secondary schools are starting to respond and do seem to be starting to pick up on the fact that these children are coming out with a level of French that is far greater than most primary modern foreign language provision, which is often gets not much further than counting and a few colours and things like that. And certainly, I know I was talking to one teacher in my children's secondary, and they said that for a while they were wondering where all these French families were, because suddenly there were all these children turning up who were speaking actually really quite good French, and they assumed there was a French speaker or a French parent in the household. And it took them a while to realise that actually it wasn't. They'd meet the parents and they'd both be English, and then they'd realise actually they'd all come from Shaftesbury Park. And one of the things they're now doing is offering what they call the home language. So essentially, the children don't do French lessons anymore. They can do Spanish, or they can do something else entirely. They will do the French GCSE basically in their own time. They'll get a little bit of homework. The teacher checks in with them every now and again, and then they get popped in for the GCSE. It's not quite the same as having immersion for everything else. It's not quite the same as having a proper bilingual program. But it actually means that very often for those children, they're getting an extra GCSE, and they're getting a very good GCSE pass with actually, for them, very, very little work, because they've already done it naturally. By the time they're 11 years old, they're just converting all that knowledge into the GCSE curriculum.
I hear, James, what you're saying about secondary schools beginning to sort of think about how to capitalise on the work that children in primary schools are doing. But it still baffles me that in the sort of the reviewing the national curriculum, and people throwing their hands up at the low uptake of people doing languages at GCSE, A level, etc., and they're not investing in primary schools. They need to ignite the joy, the curiosity in the early years for children to be able to feel confident in taking subjects, languages at GCSE and beyond. And it's not just to learn the language, the whole culture, the excitement of learning something, different, and knowing where they stand in this world is something that I think there should be just greater investment and greater thinking about the whole, rather than, people are not doing an A-level or GCSE in the language. There's so much more than that.
Yeah, there's so much joy that the children derive from learning languages here, and it sits in direct opposition to that typical thing of the English don't speak other languages. They do. They just need to be given the opportunity to enjoy learning them, have a focus on oracy. Like, the children cannot wait to put their hand up and say, I want to give my answer in French. Can I read that in French? I say it sits so far away from that we don't speak another language. It's about giving them the opportunity and having it at that early stage, rather than filling them with fear, get to secondary school, and I just can't do that. I'll stay speaking English.
I think it's important to reflect that this builds the children's confidence enormously. And I will draw on one of my own experiences of taking the kids. We went off to Paris, thought we'd have a nice little time there. You go into the cafe or the restaurant, and in this one, of course, the waiter sees us, immediately clocks and thinks, English tourists, comes over with a menu that's got the big European Union Jack on it and pictures on the menu for us. And then my daughter, who at the time would have been about 8 or 9 possibly, sort of actually, un table boquette, s'il vous plaît, and said it with this impeccable French accent. And he just said, un moment, walked back and came back with this menu in French, and then just continued talking to us in French for the rest of the time. And having already admitted that my French accent is absolutely atrocious, the fact that she basically somehow persuaded this French waiter that we were more than capable of having our entire experience in that restaurant in French was I think quite remarkable. Not just for us as proud parents, but I think also for her, that, you know, this put a child in control, an 8 or 9 year old child in control, and it actually showed them that what they're doing is not just about learning something. It's about, you know, something quite powerful, and it's about communicating, and it's about feeling comfortable and confident, even in foreign countries. You know, like whenever I think about languages, you know, there's always this analogy that you unlock a different version of yourself, or a part of yourself that you wouldn't have known, and that cultural and understanding and almost the respect you have for the traditions of somewhere else, you know, that may be miles and miles away from your own home, is you know, it can't be understated. And so you know, I'm massively impressed by the work you guys are doing. I mean, you don't need my vindication, because obviously you've been on this journey for a long time, but what I would suggest to anyone who's listening, you know, to get in touch with you guys and to go and see it and see how things are, because, you know, I'm sure only a very small percentage of listeners will actually have the capacity to even think about this kind of journey. But perhaps for them, it might be, you know, for a listener, it might be a watershed. Or actually, this might be the kind of environment I want to teach in, or this might be the kind of, you know, future I want for my own children, that kind of thing. So to know that those options are there. And then obviously, you know, with the secondary sort of dilemma, it sounds like there might be a Shaftesbury Park Multi-Academy Trust in the pipeline. You know, I don't know how busy you guys are, if you want some more work. But, you know, that's always something to think about now, where, you know, academization is 100% as we move into the 2030s. All I said to say thank you very much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having us on here. It's been a really enjoyable experience, and I'll let Bunmi and Alastair say, but I think personally speaking, it's always great to talk about Shaftesbury Park. It's a wonderful school, and I'm incredibly proud. I'd also like to say, because they won't say this, I'm incredibly proud of the team there, not just Bunmi and Alastair. I think, you know, it's a prime example of what teachers working together with a common purpose can accomplish anything. And, you know, I think seeing what they've done is a testament to the career of teaching.
Thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It's always great to share the work that we do here. We're passionate about what we do, and we just want to spread the word far and wide. Thank you, Kieran. And yeah, I'll just reiterate what you said. Anyone who's listening, please come and visit. We love sharing the school, showing the model, and we're there to support people who are on the journey as well. And to everyone at home, until next time, thanks for listening.